Seeing as how it's Valentine's Day, I thought I would give a quick look at what is easily one of my favorite shows, and without a doubt, the best love story in its genre. Just a quick heads up before we get into the video, I will be discussing spoilers very heavily as the video progresses. So if you don't want anything spoiled for you, I would highly suggest watching the show before this video. Or if you don't mind it being spoiled and just want to watch the video, then let's get started. Now, I'll be the first to admit, the show does drag on in sections and has several plot lines and episodes that just don't really seem to go anywhere. Do we want to focus on these kids? Absolutely not. And for the sake of this video, let's just pretend they don't exist at all. Do we want to focus on filler? Not quite. What about Holland's creepy obsession with Eureka? No. And by the way, alien or not, Eureka is way too young for Holland, so this whole plotline was always weird to me. Move on, dude. Is it about the cool mech action? Well, maybe a little. These scenes can get pretty awesome. But no, this is what the show is about. These two right here. The way they handle the love story in the show is actually extremely well done. Even though other aspects of the show can deviate pretty hard, these sections of the show never disappoint. A lot of anime based on romance are pretty poorly done, typically relying on cliches, rushed storytelling, and fan service that just make them all a clone of each other. But this show handles it in a very real way, while also implementing the sci-fi elements that add to the story. When Renton first meets Eureka, he instantly falls in love with her. But Eureka, being an alien, has very little to no understanding of this side of life. And this is where a lot of the conflict in their relationship comes from throughout the series. For the first big chunk of the series, their relationship is completely one-sided, because Eureka is genuinely oblivious to his feelings. Renton at this point obviously doesn't realize she's not human, and he takes her misunderstanding of his feelings as a lack of interest for him. Not to mention Holland is being a complete prick to him, her kids hate him, and he generally gets the impression that no one aboard the Gecko even cares about him. At some point, the Nirvash even starts to prefer Renton as a pilot, causing Eureka to feel jealous and starts to act cold around Renton. Through many episodes of him being kicked around, and eventually being told he can't see Eureka anymore because they think he caused her to become ill. So after this, he just cracks under the pressure and runs away. In his mind at this point, no one wants him to be there. And the lack of emotions from Eureka causes him to believe that he has no place with them or her, and he spends 5 full episodes away from her. In this time, you see Renton trying to move on and start a new life, and surprisingly, you see the opposite from Eureka. She slowly starts to understand more about Renton's feelings, and begins asking around the ship why she feels this way. One of the crew members explains to her that the reason she was being distant with him was over jealousy, and the reason she's missing Renton is because she loves him. They talk to her about how she's changed since meeting him, and it finally becomes clear to her what's been happening this whole time. The unfortunate thing here is that she has no idea Renton ran away, and everyone just keeps telling her he's out running errands. Things get pretty damn sad in these episodes, including her finally discovering that Renton is gone. She gets really depressed, isolates herself from the crew, and even starts to wear Renton's clothes and doing his job on the ship to take his place. Meanwhile, Renton is still trying to make things work with his new family, until they discover who he really is. To their credit, they're completely honest with him, and tell him that they've been hired to take down the Gecko. They tell him the time and the place the Gecko will be before the attack takes place, and give him the choice of staying with them or rejoining with the Gecko. Of course, he takes the latter. And this is where the magic happens, folks. This leads to the best episode in the whole series. Eureka was previously promised by Holland that he would go out and look for Renton, but because he learns of the military presence in the area, he gives up and returns. Eureka is obviously upset by this, and also rejects Holland's final creepy advance. So she steals a ref board and goes out to look for Renton on her own. In an ultimate twist of irony, Renton finally returns to the Gecko while Eureka is out searching for him. He tells Holland that he doesn't care about rejoining him and that he's only here for Eureka. This is where they discover that she's gone off looking for Renton and has run into a military blockade, causing Renton to run for the Nirvash and go out and rescue her. They cut to her avoiding fire and trying to get away from the military, eventually falling off her board and landing on Charles' LFO. She loses her grip and falls through the sky, leading to one of the cutest damn things you will ever see. I'll just let this scene speak for itself.
A white LFO?
After this unbelievably touching reunion between the two of them, they can finally move forward together. Now this is where the series really sets itself apart from others in its genre. You'd think from here it'd be boy gets girl, they live together forever, and all is good, the end. But no, it doesn't go the typical route. These characters actually begin to develop a genuine relationship with each other. It's not all floating hearts and chibi characters, they actually have real discussions with each other. Take this episode for example. Renton notices a scratch on the Nirvash and begins to fix it, telling Eureka that he thinks it looks better without them. This causes her to become self-conscious about her own scars from a previous episode, and looks into getting makeup so that Renton would think she's pretty. Now, we all know where this is going, and it really makes the episode hard to watch knowing this. Of course, being an alien, she doesn't understand how to use makeup. She goes around the ship pretty adorably scribbling in her notebook and taking notes on all of the women aboard the ship. This leads to her doing not so good of a job, and Renton, like the idiot he is, thinks the kids played a prank on her. Naturally, she runs off embarrassed, and Renton goes after her. In another show, this would just play for a joke, but not this one. He actually follows her, and they have a pretty sweet conversation.
What happened, Eureka? Let me help you wipe it off. Hey, come on. I want to see.
Who cares?
Hey, why are you mad at me?
Let go!
I don't understand you, Eureka!
I look strange.
No, you don't. You're really pretty. Especially when you're not wearing all that makeup. You see, Eureka, I love you.
This next episode is also another great example of their chemistry. Renton and Eureka are having a pleasant conversation with each other when she casually brings up that she knew his father. Given that Renton never knew his dad, he kind of flies off the handle a little bit. This leads to another quite sad scene where she explains the reason she doesn't understand is that she's not human like him and runs off. They spend the whole episode not seeing each other and instead talking to the other crew members, each giving different perspectives on the situation. This eventually leads to them finally coming back together and having a talk. Again, this is very well done. They actually have a real conversation and open up to each other like a real couple would. It's scenes like this that really hold the show together, and honestly, this show should have focused less on the filler side and spent more time doing what this scene is doing right here. Even discovering she's an alien doesn't really seem to faze him at all, and just further adds to the cuteness of these two. The next several episodes have more great moments of drama, and some more great moments of showing their relationship grow. I mean, seriously, how could you watch this scene and just not love it?
Because how I feel about Norv is... What about you? I mean, you and Renton.
Now that right there is just adorable, and it's even more touching when you consider how the show started. This is Eureka when he first met her.
Grandpa, this LFO is kind of...
Excuse me, I need a favor. Can you please lend me that flamethrower that's sitting back behind the factory? The one that's used on all the scubs?
And this is her in one of the last episodes.
I'm sorry you're having to stick around here working like this.
No, I stepped on Holland's face too. It's only right.
Seeing her character transform like this is part of why the love story in this show is so great, because before meeting Renton, she never had any of these experiences. The show even gets very real towards the end, and honestly, it's pretty damn dark. Renton, Eureka, and her kids end up on a distant world together with seemingly no goal or no way to get back. This leads to a lot of tension between all of them, and Eureka begins acting distant and cold with Renton again. He gets frustrated and wants to know what's wrong, but she keeps insisting she's fine. The audience at this point already knows that she's transforming into something else, and Renton eventually discovers. She has a pretty heartbreaking talk with Renton about wanting more time and not wanting it to end this way. Renton reassures her that everything is alright, even damaging his own arm so she won't feel alone.
I thought that we would finally be together. I thought that we would be together. This is so cruel. Oh, why? Stop that, Renton!
Now we're the same. If my left arm completely swells up, then we'll both be the same. You see? We'll have matching arms. It's the same. We'll be the same now. We'll always be together. I mean, we made a promise, right? We'd always be together.
As if the scene wasn't sad and dark enough, one of her kids even threatens to shoot Renton with a gun. Yeah, it's a real downer. Eventually, everyone calms down, but given Renton's probably unwise decision to smash his arm with a rock, he passes out from the shock. This leads to Eureka and the kids trying to care for him and keep him safe, as Eureka continues to transform even more. He eventually wakes up and sees the way she looks now. She hides her arm out of embarrassment, but Renton, being the lovable little bastard he is, says this.
You're really beautiful, Eureka. I think those wings look really good on you.
Renton!
Eureka,
love you so much, Renton. I want to be with you forever.
Me too.
Cementing what was already a perfect relationship into something that you just know won't end for anything. The show still has a little ways to go from here, but this is mostly the end. Eureka sacrifices herself to save the Earth, Renton charges through hell to reach her, and they spend the rest of their lives together. Well, until Eureka AO comes in and screws with their happy ending. But I guess it's fine because they still get a new happy ending in the end of that show. But aside from that, I think this romance was perfectly done. Obviously, the show itself wasn't always perfect, but these two always were. I never felt like I was just watching an anime, or even characters for that matter. The love shown between these two was so real that it just draws you in. That's why even with its relatively limited number of episodes, it keeps coming back again and again. They've released an alternate reality movie, they created a sequel series to it, and they're even starting a brand new movie trilogy to dive further into the story. The reason why is that people just love this story, and they can't get enough of it. I think the reason why Eureka 7 AO was so universally panned is that people wanted more of Renton and Eureka, and instead we got 95% filler. We did get to see them again, which was great, but it just wasn't worth sitting through the rest of the series. The original series just had so much genuine heart and charm to it, and it's almost impossible to try and recreate. You actually feel Renton's struggle through the first 25 episodes, and as much as I didn't like the filler, it did serve to further illustrate how long his journey to finally being with her actually took. It's an experience that everyone watching can relate to, especially if you discovered this show at a young age. It's a real coming-of-age story that takes you through the life of a boy growing up and slowly understanding the world around him, while also dealing with romantic feelings that he's never had before. You feel the pain of the earlier episodes, and you feel the sense of relief after episode 26. It takes you on an emotional roller coaster that never lets up until it's over, and for that reason it stands above all the rest. I mean, just look at these two. How could you not root for them?